Hello again, and welcome back to the dramatic story of Master Sergeant Rene Fougeray. I'm Bob von Bargen, President Emeritus of the Armed Forces Heritage Museum, and privileged to manage the Living History Project. When we left Rene, he was at Tan Son Nhut Airport in Saigon as the city was falling to the invading North Vietnamese army. It was April 1975, and Rene was on the BABYLIFT mission. He was charged with loading missionaries and babies onto his aircraft and departing quickly as the invaders were closing in on the airport. Let's join Rene as he relates what happened next.
We were just debating whether to get out of there or not, because it was not the best place to be. There was smoke coming up all over the perimeter. So,
Were these just fires, or were these?
No, when we came in, you saw
these incursion fires.
You could see in Saigon that there was a lot going on in Saigon. So there was a couple minutes later, some other vehicles started to come up behind us, and again, I said to the loader, I said, I don't know who these people are. So anyway, once they got within a couple hundred yards, they put a white flag out. They saw I was armed, and they put a diaper out as a white flag. And the buses pulled up, and a minister, a Lutheran minister, was in the one bus. He came up to me, and he said, "Come on back here." He said, "We're really glad to see you guys." And I went back to the buses and looked in. There was 3 buses. And I just got back on headset, and I said to the loader, I said, "We got a mess here." I said, you should probably shut down the engines and just leave the APU running, because we had no service, no nothing. We couldn't get fuel. We wouldn't have a lot of fuel. And Dunphy opened the back doors. We put one ramp down, and what we had 14 adults and about 78 babies. And I mean babies. Some of them were this big, just in a diaper. Some of them could walk. There was a couple maybe this big, but that was it. Now we had a bare cargo aircraft. We had a bare cargo-only configuration.
So you've got a flat floor.
It was just a bare floor. We had
web seats on the side.
We had about 12 web seats, and we had normal 8 blankets for a crew and 8 pillows, and that's all we had. And so we put straps across about every 10 feet, cargo straps across, and we sat the adults backwards, and then put children in between them, because we had to make a max power takeoff out of there. And the max power takeoff, the 141, basically goes up like that, and it puts a lot of pressure on whatever's in it.
So they were in little cribs that you...
No cribs. We had every 10 feet we had an adult, and we had the babies in between to stop them from rolling to the back.
So the babies themselves were strapped to the floor.
Babies were just laying on the floor, laying on the bare floor with an adult every 10 feet between them to try to stop them from rolling to the back of the aircraft when we made the max power takeoff. We couldn't go over the perimeter of the base. It was too dangerous. We just went up and went out over the ocean. When we got out over the ocean, it was a mess. Almost all of them had rolled into the back of the airplane. It was just a pile of people. So we started to make some semblance of order out of that. We tried to move people around and get people situated. We put our 8 blankets on the floor. We put some of the babies there. And it was just it was a mess. And after about an hour out, we had things kind of stabilized. We had no floor heat. Our floor heat was broken, or inoperative, and the kids were all freezing to death just about. We gave them our flight jackets, we gave them clothing we had, whatever, that was all we had. And I was walking back up to the front of the airplane, and under one of our web seats that was down, in between the fuselage and the cargo lock, I saw this baby. It was this big. It had rollen into the cargo locks down there. And we had been going an hour up with no floor heat. So I took the infant out, I put it up on the web seat, and there was just no motion whatsoever. It was doing absolutely nothing. So I started tapping on its chest, I opened its mouth, I cleared it out a little bit, and I saw a little movement in the arms, so I put my oxygen mask on it at 100% and put it in my flight jacket, and I handed it to a woman there. And she then held the child until we landed in the Philippines.
Okay, you went to Clark Air Base in the Philippines.
We went down to Clark, and then there was Hundreds of volunteers down there. We handed the babies off to them, and they all left, and there we were sitting on the ramp. Everybody was gone. And we thought we were going to crew rest. We already had 16, 17 hours into our day. And about 20-some pages of write-ups on the airplane with several red X's.
Okay, these are malfunctions on the airplane, things that are wrong mechanically with the airplane.
Well, the airplanes were out in the system. We were flying the heck out of them, and there was limited maintenance every place you went, or parts. And if it wasn't really broke, you continued flying it. So when we landed at Clark, we had 2 generators out, 2 generators running. And we thought we were done for the day, going to crew rest. They had ramp saturation in the Philippines at that time, which means there was no place to park any airplanes. They couldn't keep us. And they also didn't have maintenance for us. The only maintenance that could fix our airplane was in Okinawa. So they loaded us back up with cargo and sent us back to Okinawa. So that day we went Okinawa, Vietnam, Clark, Philippines, back to Okinawa. We had over 20 hours into our day, and when we landed in Okinawa with an airplane that wasn't going anywhere after Okinawa.
Yeah.
And we really didn't, to us it was an interesting day at the office, but it was just another day at the office. And next day we were alerted to fly again, and we saw in the Stars and Stripes and some of the local newspapers news of the last BABYLIFT that came out of Vietnam, and it was us.
You're the last airplane out.
We were the last airplane out of there, yeah. And then when we got back to McGuire, there was newspaper people waiting for us. The news had gotten back, I guess, probably through the Pearl S. Buck Foundation itself, that these last babies did get out of there. And it was a pretty interesting day.
And many of these children were the children of GIs. Who
That was the story. These orphanages were set up, but these were children that were born of American servicemen, mixed with the Vietnamese. And I don't know that for a fact. They were just babies. But and on the aircraft that day, we only had one person that spoke English. Two. There was a Vietnamese officer who had worked closely with the U.S. government, who had to get out of there, and there was this Lutheran minister who was part of the entourage.
And he was on the airplane.
Yeah, he left with us. Yeah, as did the 3 drivers whoever was driving the buses. They just pulled the buses off onto the grass, and they hopped on the airplane.
The babies were now safe in the Philippines. They would be processed and transported directly to a new life of opportunity in the United States. Rennie's aircraft was in dire need of repair. So what's next? Tune in next week and we'll learn what happened. Also, Rennie will tell you about a 30-year anniversary function held at the Pearl S. Buck Foundation in Doylestown that commemorated the BABYLIFT. And what about those babies? What happened to them over the years? See you next week for the rest of the story.